obviously I'm going for monkey fish.
Do I have a choice?
No. I stole it.
Okay. Old pendulous breast herself.
Chase you through a cave. I know you do outside.
And we're going to talk about how wrong you are after the...
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Monsters Lounge. I'm Jeni.
And I'm Tressa.
Tressa,
maybe
we
you
had
could mute me your computer or something. I don't know. Something weird's going over on your end. That's
something
for sure.
weird is going on over on my end. I'm not quite sure what it is.
It's cool. We're having a great time over here.
We are having a great time over here. I'm not quite sure what's happening.
Find the window with the speaker and close it. Hey, you know what we did last weekend? We went to Missouri Paracon.
We did. We had a really great time doing it.
Good times.
You talk now a little bit about it while I try to fix this.
Okay, so what we did, I don't hear it anymore.
Yeah, neither do I.
Listen.
Weird.
Hey, we drove 7 hours. It was a great time. We talked about all the people we love and some other people too. And then we got there and we had the smelliest bathroom in the world.
And when we say that, it's not because of the bathroom. It was very specifically the water that was coming in through the toilet.
Yeah.
It was gross. All the rest of the water was fine. Sink water, shower water, everything.
Fine. Yep. It wasn't bad to take a shower. That was fine. But why? Why does it feel like there is a dead body that we are sharing a room with? It was not fun.
I'm also not 1,000% sure as to all of the things that we did this weekend that was the first thing that we talked about.
No, but I think it's important because it was gross. And that's pretty much the only thing I can think about. Anyway.
Yeah, it was the first Missouri Paracon, and it was phenomenal. They had things so well organized, so well laid out. There was zero complaints. It was awesome.
Oh my God, it was a great event. Come on. Great speakers. The place was beautiful, even though the bathroom was smelly. And the vendor area. So listen, I have so many complaints for so many other cons. This one was done flawlessly. And if you want those other cons names, you just DM me because I'm just saying.
It was fun. It was our buddy Greg Lawson's birthday, so that was nice to be able to spend a birthday with him and his lovely wife Lynn, who we absolutely adore. She's so cute.
We love them both very much. And he said it was the best birthday he had since he was 6 years old. So you're welcome. That was
all because of us. I did not gamble because I don't have the money with which to gamble.
Nor do I, or the skill.
Yeah, but boy, Jeff Ballinger still sure gambled and gave us 75 cents to split.
He gave us each a quarter. Yes,
to split. Okay. I said to split.
Okay. At the end. Did you see any good talks while we were there?
You know what? I did. So many of them were phenomenal, but I always love hearing Richard Estep. He is
him and Greg together were great.
Oh my gosh, they're so good.
I went in there separately by myself. Did you see that too?
Yeah, I did see that too.
Oh boy.
Listen to me.
They had a whole thing about movie monsters, and then
he went into that. It was really cool.
Yeah, and then Greg had It's a banger show tonight, you guys.
You guys, nothing is going correctly. Our poor guest had to re-download Chrome on her computer, so she's struggling to get in. I have a cat that apparently is going wild. He slept all day long.
promise this won't be the whole show. No, I'm asking you to promise me this, Jeni.
I'm trying to promise you right now. I'm holding onto my screen so I can't tip it over again.
That's fine. We watched Dave and Shane introduce the new trailer to their new show, Paranormal Mysteries, on Beacon TV. Everybody go download Beacon. It's fantastic. Yeah. And now you have one more
Tressa.
reason, because the trio are together. What?
Can you see our guest?
Yes.
Okay, that is phenomenal news. Hang on. Let me take care of this issue real quick.
Okay.
And hang on. Let me let's get to introducing the guest, because we've talked about this long enough. And I've been having these troubles long enough. So you know,
look like you just came out of an explosion. And it sounds like it too.
It sounds like it too. Anyway, my good Lord. All right. So, very excited about tonight's guest, because a couple of things are going on. First of all, she's going to talk about geology and how it affects some of the areas of the paranormal, which I'm always a big fan. I don't know if I've mentioned before, but national parks, I love them. Oh. And part of why they're so cool is the different geological makeups of it. So she's going to talk a little bit about that. She's going to talk about some divine femininity, which is awesome, and Nessie.
Yay!
Amazing.
Let's introduce her.
Yes, please. All right. So Hayley Ramsey, Hayley A. Ramsey, is a multifaceted author, researcher, and tour guide whose passion lies in unraveling the mysteries of ancient civilizations and esoteric traditions. With a focus on old world goddess cults, archaeoastronomy, and megalithic sites, she has delved deeply into the rich tapestry of history and myth. Having dedicated extensive time to studying these subjects across Europe, particularly in Scotland, Hayley has become intimately familiar with the intricate connections between local lore, such as Arthurian legends, Grail quests, and Templar mysteries, and the ancient sites that dot the landscape. Her expertise extends from the origins of secret societies such as Freemasonry, where she has been meticulously researching the presence of the divine feminine, tracing its roots back to ancient death and resurrection rituals originating in Egypt and beyond. Her profound insights and discoveries are chronicled in her book, The Bringer of Life, A Cosmic History of the Divine Feminine, a captivating exploration of the feminine throughout human history. Hayley leads tours around the world throughout the year, and you can explore those on her website, HayleyARamsey.com. And please help me welcome Hayley.
Hi. I'm here finally.
Yay! So
it's all right.
Nice that you could join us. I don't mean that in a weird, sarcastic, mean way.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, it was. I was so glad to hear from you guys last night. It was great to get the invitation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for doing on such a short notice.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime that I can talk about Scotland and some of my favorite places like Loch Ness and portals and time travel, I'm all for it. So
fantastic.
Excellent news. And don't worry, all you missed was my green screen going down with a crash probably 4 times because my cat, Merlin, decided that it is now time to tear everything apart.
That's great fun.
I know.
Great timing.
Yeah.
It's working out well for us. Yeah. Doing well.
Gamebuster show so far.
Doing well. Yeah. What brought you into this love of especially like the old lore centering around Europe and specifically Scotland?
You know, it's interesting because growing up, I was fascinated and had this obsession with the cartoon film, The Sword and the Stone.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I used to watch it on repeat all the time when I was a child. That was my favorite film. I was obsessed with it. And I can't tell you why I was obsessed with it, but I just was. It was something about King Arthur, something about the Sword and the Stone story. I was just totally obsessed. And growing up, I just couldn't stay away from Arthurian lore. And the more that I dove into the legends of the Holy Grail, the Templars, and King Arthur, all of that really stuck out to me and felt just, I don't know, it felt very, I want to say like home to me, but that's not the way I want to say that. That's not the right words for it. It felt very familiar to me. It felt very familiar. And so when I went to Scotland for the first time, it was after I lost my dad in 2019. And I started doing research into our family, which is Clan Ramsey from Scotland. And I joined Clan Ramsey in the United States and actually started attending Clan Ramsey gatherings to feel closer to his family, to feel closer to him, essentially. And I took my first trip to Scotland after he passed away that year. And my goal was to go back to our family estate, Dalhousie Castle, to take some of his ashes home to Dalhousie Castle, where the Ramseys came from. And so that's where he was directly descended from. And had Dad's ancestor not decided to come over to America, probably because he did something shady and they, he wanted to cover it up and get over to America, he may have been in line to be the next Laird of Dalhousie, Dad, but so be it. Here we are now, but it was really an honor to get to take his ashes home to Dalhousie, and that set the stage for me. The second I stepped off the plane in Scotland, I felt like I was home for the first time in my life. I'd never felt like I fit in anywhere. I'd never felt home before, and I made this journey to Scotland alone. And so when I stepped off the plane, I just was so overwhelmed with emotion. It was like a breath of just, wow, I can finally breathe.
Wow.
I'm home, finally, at last. Like my whole life, I'm finally home. And so going to Dalhousie Castle, now I ended up actually living at Dalhousie Castle, which is a hotel, a high-end hotel. I went back in the fall and lived there for 6 months. And they actually helped me get my tours going because I'm Ramsey, and they saw the passion that I had and the dream that I had for doing tours. And I wanted to do day tours that were actually centered around King Arthur and the Knights Templar. And it's just down the road from Roslin Chapel, believe it or not. And the Sinclairs of Roslin were intermarrying with the Ramseys of Dalhousie. So I'm also a Sinclair and a Stuart by blood and marriage on both sides of my family. So there's all kinds of interesting bloodline connections there that we could talk about in another show. But it's really fascinating stuff. And I was just so overwhelmed with it all. And it was so fascinating. And I just fell in love with the place. It's captivating.
So wild. Like I feel like I've been hearing more and more people talking about how they have a draw to a geographical location and they have no real reason to. They don't have they've never even been there, maybe seen a few pictures, but that's it. But they have this amazing, you have a family line that comes from there. So I can imagine I would think that you might have some sort of energetic draw to that place, but to feel like you just, oh, this is home now. I'm good. This is where I'm supposed to be. I love that very much.
Well, what's really interesting too is this whole idea of the divine feminine too, and what we're talking about tonight is really not related to the divine feminine so much. But on that note, I want to talk about my personal relationship to the divine feminine. And in my real quickly, a little brief background, growing up, I experienced a lot of suppression from, I would say both men and women, but primarily men. And still to this day, I'm facing oppression from men. And I still deal with that, obviously, as a woman in male fields, so that still goes on today, even though we're supposed to be moving into the age of Aquarius of enlightenment and equality. And we're in the age of the Grail Bearer, the Cupbearer, bringing enlightenment and the return of the divine feminine and liberation. We're supposed to be bringing in equality and the whole concept of union of the male and female, that inner union of the Holy Spirit and Mother, Father, God. But it's that integration period that we're in now that's the struggle. And that's the transitional period from Pisces into Aquarius that we're seeing at the moment. And for me, that's been a struggle, but also looking back at my bloodline, having my genealogy done was very enlightening because I found that I'm also a direct descendant of Mary, Queen of Scots.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so looking back historically, there's been, and she's just one of many significant women. I'm using her because I've felt the most connection to her of all women in my bloodline. And I'm using her specifically before I ever knew that I was directly related to Mary, Queen of Scots. I was obsessed with her, just like I was obsessed with King Arthur and the Arthurian legends. I remember being in high school and there were documentaries about Mary, Queen of Scots, and about Queen Elizabeth, but it was never about Queen Elizabeth that I was drawn to. It was always about Mary, Queen Mary, Queen of Scots. I was so drawn to her because she was a woman in a man's world, and she was the one that was trying to rule, and it was always men coming for her crown, men coming for her throne. And she was just, you know, always dealt a shitty hand, really. But she did what she could for her country, and she really put her country first. And she died fighting for it in the end. And that I felt for her, because she was in a position where she had to be a man for her country, and she tried with all she could, but ultimately it was an era where she didn't have the ability to fight the way that a woman should, the way that we could today. So I really felt a kinship to her. And then later on, I had my genealogy done, and lo and behold, I'm directly descended from her. That was really crazy, but it felt almost like I've inherited in some ways that generational trauma that's passed on through the bloodline. And so generational trauma too has been a big theme in my work and my research, and looking at the divine feminine and healing the divine feminine too as part of this transitional period into the age of Aquarius. I see a lot of that happening, healing the feminine, but also healing generational and ancestral trauma.
Yeah. I mean, that for sure was going to be, I know, like the main bulk of what we were going to ask you about was not that, but it was definitely on the list of just that had to be so interesting. And, you know, how that working on that book sort of affected you as a woman, you know, and going through that. I'm sure there was some growth or something that was going on.
It's interesting you say that, but it wasn't until after I published the book that I had sat down, and I think I had maybe had a few drinks and started spilling my life story to somebody. And then they said to me, you know what? That makes perfect sense why you wrote this book about the suppression of the divine feminine, because you experienced the suppression in your life growing up. The things that I went through in my childhood and some of the things that I experienced. My dad that I talk about, John Ramsey, who I went and spread his ashes. He was my grandfather. My biological parents were not, it was an abusive situation that I had to escape and get out of. And so that was a very unhealthy situation, but it was karmic. You know, I think I had to be set up in these situations because I had to learn to take care of myself. That was part of my journey as a woman, to be able to experience what it's like to be oppressed, to experience, being a woman in a man's world, and to be able to be strong enough to take care of myself, and to be able to teach other women about the divine feminine, and to be able to be in this mindset to teach, to write about it, to understand it, to have the passion for it. Because subconsciously, I may have not been thinking about this when I decided to write this book about the divine feminine, but I was thinking about it, whether I was realizing it or not. That's what was spurring me to write this. And that's why I felt it was such an important message to put out there.
Okay, you just brought me to a whole new level with understanding with your grandfather. I had my dad wasn't particularly around, so my grandfather pretty much raised me, and so you just shot me a little bit in the heart with that. But thinking about how wonderful it was that dad wasn't there so that grandpa could be there, you know. Anyway,
it was with me. It was that my grandfather was my hero. He was kind of the one that saved me in a very bad abusive situation. So he was my hero. And growing up, I grew up with my grandparents primarily. So they were the ones that I always felt like were meant to be my true soul parents. And I'm just like them. I'm 100%. I was having this conversation with my mom and my mom yesterday, and she was saying, you know, it's so weird. You are so like him, and you are so like me, just to a T. And we were just discussing this yesterday. Just crazy. But yeah, that's what brought me to Scotland in the first place. And then when I got there, it was like, there's no going back now. And I started doing these tours to these locations that are connected to King Arthur, the Knights Templar. And with all that said, where there's the Knights Templar, there's the divine feminine. So there's the connection there, because the Knights Templar were revering the divine feminine. And it's because they were following a more ancient tradition that goes back beyond, as you were mentioning in my bio, the death and resurrection traditions that I study go beyond back to Egypt. And that's where they were really getting their information from. And the Egyptians were carrying on an even more ancient tradition. But if you go back and you look at Isis. She was the consort of Osiris. She was the goddess of death and resurrection. And she was also considered Venus. Her star that she was associated with was Venus. Just like Inanna, Ishtar, Isis, Virgin Mary, Queen of Heaven, they were all referred to as the same thing. And that's where the Knights Templar were able to kind of substitute Venus, Isis, Mary. And so all of their churches were dedicated to the Virgin Mary.
Oh, wow.
Or were they? Truly. So it was kind of a cover-up for their own way of venerating the feminine aspect of God, because they believed in a dual-gendered God.
Oh, okay.
Mother, Father,
All
God,
right.
yes.
Okay.
I want to get a little bit more into the Knights Templar right after this break.
For those of you naysayers, I want you to know how much I appreciate how many of you grabbed a hold of my small package after last week's show. It is out and available. You can get both of my books, The Other Side, A Guide to the Paranormal and Ghost Hunting, and my brand new book, Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness. Both books are out. One, of course, kind of a how-to ghost hunt book, and the other story book of strange supernatural occurrences all around the world. You can get your hand on my small package by just ordering it right off of my website. You can go right to paranormal60.com, scroll down on the front page there, or go to the shop and scroll down and you'll see our book bundle. And I was so humbled by the fact of how many men put their hands on my small package at the end of last week's show and bought it. It was great. It made me feel loved and wanted. I'm not going to lie.
A fine
that
example of why we need to be more in our divine feminine.
There it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Listen,
Mhm.
I tell me more about the Knights of Templar. You know what? Yeah, do that. I want to know how more about the divine feminine in the Knights Templar, because this is a new concept to me. To me, it's just a bunch of dudes like going around and doing dude stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, the dudes doing dude stuff. They were doing dude stuff, honoring the divine feminine. So that's what they were really doing. They were carrying on a very ancient tradition, going back all the way back to a pharaoh named Akhenaten. So this pharaoh named Akhenaten was very controversial because he started the first monotheistic religion in Egypt, and that was revering Aten, the sun disk. But the sun disk was not just male. It was considered male and female. So this was monotheistic dualism, and this would be Mother, Father, God. Now, this is actually probably pretty close to what the original Judaism was, because original Judaism also actually was monotheistic dualism. The true Judaism, the true tradition within the Jewish teachings was that God was both male and female in the Gnostic teachings. That's what Jesus was teaching.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the Roman Catholic Church. That's a whole nother podcast, maybe. But another time.
1,000%.
Yes, it's all amazing stuff there. But so going back to Akhenaten and Egypt, and this is kind of what I'm working on right now, is the connection between Egypt and Britain, and the book that I'm currently writing, which is From Ra to Ramsey: Rediscovering the Egyptian Origins of Britain. There is a huge influx of Egyptians that come to Britain and basically establish the culture, the language of the Gallic speakers, and influence the religion. The Druids, if you will, have a very Egyptian-based teaching, and everything you can pretty much go back and see is formed from Egyptian teachings, and even from the Book of the Dead. So with that said, Akhenaten starts this whole monotheistic religion. All the people in Egypt are so used to worshiping their multiple gods. And they're like, what's going on? We don't like this. We, the people, are going to rebel. And it just stirs the pot. So everybody starts getting upset. He has a brother, Tutmosis, potentially Moses, if you will. The biblical Moses.
Okay.
So this is a possibility. We don't know for certain if that's the case. But it's one possibility, one theory, that Thutmose could have been Moses. And so Moses would have been the one that led the people out of Egypt. But if this was one and the same with Thutmose, he would have been the high priest of Ptah. So this would have given him the right to carry the ark and with that said, all of the laws of the land of Egypt.
Okay.
So perhaps like the 10 Commandments, there's very much the equivalent. You could look at it and how it could be then written into the Bible in a different way. So he leads the people out of Egypt, and it's this monotheistic religion, and it's very different, but it could be a whole family conspiracy in a sense, because there's a daughter of Akhenaten, and it's debated on who it could be, whether it's Meritaten or another daughter of his, but it seems most likely that it was Meritaten. She takes some of her people also, seeing the crumbling empire before her because of her father's decision to make this monotheistic, dualistic religion that the people aren't really liking. And Meritaten decides, I'm going to take a group of people that follow me in the old ways, and we're going to go to the west. We're going to follow the setting sun. In an Egyptian tradition, the boat of the setting sun was very sacred. So what they decided to do is she got all her people together. She probably spoke to Moses, and they probably said, okay, these are our plans, and we're going to do this. This is a whole family conspiracy, probably. Nobody's really ever talked about that. But she takes her people. They go one way. Thutmose goes the other. And when she goes, whether it's Meritaten or Ankhseamun, she goes and she takes a group of people. They leave and they set sail from Egypt, going on to first what would be the Iberian Peninsula, stopping in Spain, and they set camp there for a time. There is a river there that there's a Templar commandery and castle on that we visit on one of my Spain and Portugal tour, and it's no coincidence that it's called the Ebro River. It's Ebro, E-B-R-O, but the word Hebrew actually just comes from H apostrophe Beru, because Ebru would mean the Nile people, or people of the river, or people of the Nile. And that's where the word Hebrew originally came from, and that's what it meant, because the Hebrew people came out of Egypt. And that's where we get the name Ebro River. So there's evidence that the Egyptians were actually in the Iberian Peninsula. And I find it quite interesting that the Knights Templar chose to build one of their castles right there in the exact area that, according to legend, Meritaten's people, or Skoda is what she's called, Skoda and her people camped out at for a time. So Skoda is a legendary name attributed to her, and her husband was given the name Gathalos. And allegedly he was a Greek prince that had been exiled from Egypt. That's a possibility. And the way that could be a possibility was that the pharaoh Ai had been exiled to Greece for a time. And this would have been, I believe, her grandfather, potentially. But, that's the way they did things back then in Egypt. Mm-hmm. So she would have been then married to him, and they would have gone on to Ireland and the west coast of Scotland. Once they reached Ireland, they would have settled where Tara is. Now, Ralph Ellis has done a lot of really good work, and so he's gone down a few different rabbit holes. A few of the things that he's come across is things like the similar linguistic elements, such as at the Hill of Tara, for example. If you break up Tara, Ta-Ra is Egyptian for land of Ra. Okay. And so he's got a book called Skoda, or I forget. I forget the exact title. I have the book here, but I forget the title. But it's Ralph Ellis, Egyptian Queen of Scots, Queen Skoda, something like that. But it's great. It has a lot of this information in it. And so he goes on to talk about the linguistic elements of Tara and kind of about their journey there. He has a different perspective on who Skoda was. I'm pretty sure it was Meritaten, but any case, there's a lot of evidence that the Egyptians did make it to Ireland and Scotland, and that's who Scotland is named after. Oh, here's the book. Thank you. Scotia. This is the book, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So Scotia, Egyptian Queen of the Scots. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you. But it's a fantastic read. Ralph does a lot of great work, and it's very well researched, lots of good stuff. Again, some of my own research has led me down some different pathways, but good stuff all in all. And that's what I believe brought the royal bloodline initially over to Britain. And then later on, Tutankhamun, it seems, bears DNA that comes from the British Isles.
What?
This is so cool.
I didn't know any of this. I didn't know, as previously stated, I didn't know anything about the Templars. I had no idea there was such a heavy Egyptian mark on it. I was like, oh, they're a bunch of Catholics. I don't know.
Nobody realizes this. It's not mainstream. Nobody really talks about it. This is why, and the only reason I really came across this is I knew about the Scotia connection because Scotland's named after Scotia and blah, blah, blah. Then there's a Stone of Destiny that allegedly Scotia brought with her when she came over. The Stone of Destiny was the biblical artifact known as Jacob's pillow.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you know what that is?
No.
So Jacob lays on it and he has a dream and sees angels ascending and descending to and from heaven to earth. So it's a very powerful vision that he has. And then, but he says stones in the plural sense, and there's 2 stones of destiny that exist currently. One is in Ireland, and then one is in Scotland. One is at the Hill of Tara, and then one is in Scotland. But neither of them, I believe, are the actual Stone of Destiny, because the one that was brought with Scotia, at least, allegedly had Egyptian hieroglyphics on it. And it was a black basalt stone. And from the legend that we've heard, it's actually still buried and hidden in the Scottish Highlands.
Oh, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it was hidden and protected by a local bishop or priest, I believe. I think it was a local bishop when the English were coming to try to retrieve it. And so they swapped out stones to protect it in the Perthshire area.
Oh, you guys, you'll switcheroo. I love it.
Yeah, and even
Historic
Scotland has verified that by their testing. They've said, this isn't legitimate. This didn't come from Egypt. This came from, or the old world, this came from Perthshire area, and it has Roman markings on it, which means that it probably came from the Roman temple right across from where Scone Abbey is, or Scone Palace is, and where Scone Abbey was, where the stone would have been housed at the time. And which means that the story and the legend of the bishop going and then swapping the stones out, hiding the original stone in the river, and then taking the stone from across where there was an old Roman ruin of a temple makes the most sense. It was an altar stone, most likely, that he took. And they found Roman numerals on it. So that's probably what it was, and what now everybody thinks is the actual Stone of Destiny.
And he's like these dummies don't know the difference. It's fine.
Right?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. The English don't know any better. It's fine.
I'm reasonably unsurprised by a lot of it, just simply because I feel like the Egyptians had their hand in everything. I mean, there's a lot of stories about them making it over to like Mesoamerica and in influencing culture over there too. So where weren't the Egyptians?
Right. That's the question. That's
all over the place. How do we go from this to time slips, though?
No, listen, we have teased time slips, Loch Ness, and geographical gateways that I am dying to hear about. I don't mean to cut this short, but also we need to go for a break.
Okay.
Hey, Jeni.
we're actually not going anywhere.
Fans.
Yes.
Are you ready to wear your passion with pride? Check out our exclusive merchandise, perfect for every true monster lover, from cozy tees to eye-catching mugs. We've got something for everyone.
She's not reading from a script either.
Nope. Want to show off your love for the podcast? Our unique designs capture all the fun, laughter, and chills that make us your favorite hangout. Plus, every purchase supports the show you love. Look good, feel great, and join the Monsters Lounge community. So what are you oh wait, I forgot to do the sound. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which sound would that be? Would that
It's
be
our-
the fun dance music
Yeah.
or the feeding ducks music?
It's feeding
that
ducks.
this is
Shh, I'm not
titled?
done. So what are you waiting for? Head over to our merch page at monstersloungepodcast.com and grab your favorites today. Be bold, be a monster, wear your spirit.
I don't like
gotten
this.
that script. from
I don't
ChatGPT.
approve of this. I don't
I'm
approve
sorry.
of this script.
Hey, we're
Monsters
back.
Lounge does not support nor condone
No, we don't. I'm sorry for that.
this
but
script
listen,
or the
we
duck feeding
need-
music that
Duck feeding music.
wait, no, I do support that. That was
No,
pretty
that
good,
was
'cause you could
really,
just,
really sexy. I like that.
yeah,
Mhm.
just pop a frozen pea on over to some ducks.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, tell us about
Yes,
lips.
because I'm so interested in this. So I looked because of the information and the show tonight, and one, I was going to say, I don't know how I didn't know this, but of course I didn't know this because I don't know where all the fault lines are in the world. But
You don't?
Scotland one runs pretty much right down the middle.
So are you
It's
referring to the
crazy.
Great Glen? The Great Glen?
Yes.
Fault? Yeah. So if you look at the Scotland, if you look at the map, at the GPS, if you pull it up on your phone, Google Maps, you'll see that the Great Glen fault line is massive. I mean, it runs straight up through basically the Highlands, goes right on up through Inverness, and that's a straight line you see going through Loch Ness, Fort William, all the way up through the ocean towards the Orkneys. So it is ginormous, and it is by far the largest in Scotland, and probably, I would say, in the UK. I'm pretty sure it's the largest in the UK.
That's what I was reading, and it still has like seismic activity, right?
Yes, it's still active. There are still actually earthquakes that take place there. Not all of them are felt, and a lot of times they're actually not even, nobody even really knows about them because they happen on a regular basis, and they are active. And there is a lot of activity that goes on, and it's just normal because it's just such a massive fault running from one end of the Scottish Highlands all the way up to the other. I'm like doing things with my arms as if you guys can see them yet. So
wow.
anyway, but you know what I mean. And I'll have to do like my little hands here. But in any case, so it's just massive, and it's crazy how much activity actually exists here, and the phenomenon has been going on for a long time. And when the Great Glen Fault was actually formed was about 400 million years ago. So this fault was formed a very, very long time ago. So if you think about that, the Great Glen Fault was formed back then 400 million years ago, and then everything was not the same as it is today, obviously, the way that you would look at it on the map, but the Great Glen Fault itself was set up that way. So if you think about it and you consider the fact that perhaps there's something to this fault, there's something significant, there's something paranormal about it, there's 400 million years between then and now. What if there's some existing portal that was opened upon the existence of this fault?
Hello.
So I'm going to open with that as I go into this.
Please do.
I'm all about it. Which, by the way, it's 100 million years older than the megalodon. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah.
Shark reference, nailed it.
So have either of you guys been to Loch Ness?
No.
Okay. So it's a very magical place. I have been many times, and I'm very lucky to have been many times. And speaking of my dad earlier, it's one of the places I've gotten to spread some of his ashes. I have a tradition of spreading his ashes at all of the beautiful sacred places I go that I think he would have enjoyed, because he was a wandering spirit just like me. He couldn't stay in one place. He was restless soul. He was Green Beret Special Forces. He had to always be going somewhere. So I remember going there one day and I spread some of his ashes along this beach, and I decided, it was a summer day in August, and I decided, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go swimming in Loch Ness. So I went and swam on the beach, and it was just really fun to get to go swimming in Loch Ness. Not many people can say they swam in Loch Ness, right?
I'm jealous.
And so it was a really nice experience. I love the energy there. It's just so different. I can't explain it. It's just different. There's a specific spot that I often take my tour groups to if we have the extra time to go, Doris Beach. It's a wonderful, just serene place. But the first encounter that's actually written about took place in 535. And it was actually Saint Columba, a Christian monk that came to Scotland from Ireland. And he was the one credited with dispelling the beast and sending him back into the loch when he had seen that there was a grave being dug near the loch. And Columba inquired about this and said, oh, what's happened? And apparently a local Pictish man had been killed by a monster in the loch. He had been swimming, he'd been attacked by a monster, and he died. So they brought his body out of the water and they dug him a grave nearby and they were burying him. And Columba thought, okay, this isn't good. Well, I better get my companion, who happened to be a local Pict that he had hired to come with him to translate and help him get through the land. And so he has the companion come with him. And I guess, he decided that it would be a good idea to have his companion go for a swim to lure the monster out, as you do. And has him swim across the loch, and lo and behold, the monster comes out and goes after the man. And Columba says, do not come any further, do not touch him, and makes the sign of the cross. And then it was as if the creature stopped, as if it was being pulled back with ropes, and retreated. So then he goes back into the loch and all is well. And the monster wasn't heard of again for a while. That was back in 535. So that was one of the earliest written.
I had no idea. It was
so nearly 2,000 years ago. Yeah, so 1,500 years ago.
That just took me by surprise. I had no idea they'd been having sightings for so long.
I do like this idea of luring things out
with some other dude. Like, you go first,
right?
Yeah,
or
taking one for the team, right? That's what we gotta
woman
do.
named Tressa. Anytime we go any place, I mean,
what?
Nothing.
I don't even like hiking. Why would I do that, Jeni? That's weird.
Look at you.
That was the first written encounter that we have, but because that was happening already, and Saint Columba just happened to be there at that time. He was a Christian, and as we know, the Christian monks were really good about chronicling things and writing things down. The people that were living in the area at the time were Picts. So who knows how many encounters or deaths or other things were taking place in the loch prior to his arrival in Scotland. We don't know how long that was going on for, right? Prior to his arrival. That's the earliest documented encounter that we have. Going forward, the next one that we have isn't, documented really until a lot later, up until modern times. I have a list of them here, but what I want to point out is that the Celtic people were very superstitious in the Highlands, especially because they believed in a creature called the Kelpie. Have you heard of it? Yeah. So what are your takes on the Kelpie?
Kelpie was more aquatic than anything else, but also could shapeshift and would occasionally lead people to their demise. But most of the time just hung out, just did what Kelpies do, just swam around a little bit. Very horse-like in appearance in a lot of cases. Yeah.
So typically the Kelpies were. The word for Kelpie is quite modern. It derived from an older Gaelic word, but usually it was a creature that was a shapeshifter and often appeared as a horse. Not always, but often appeared as a horse that was either white, gray, or black. And it would, be the most characteristic aspect of it that made you realize it was a Kelpie would be that once you got near it, you would realize that its hooves were actually backwards.
Ew.
Oh.
Yeah. It would be beautiful and perfect in every other
Mhm.
way, except its hooves would be facing backwards. And that would be the last thing you noticed before you would grab onto its mane and it would lure you to its death, you know? And
Mhm.
so one of the unique things is that the Loch Ness Monster and all the other bodies of water in Scotland, there's a story of a Kelpie. But the Loch Ness Monster, however, really didn't have too many stories quite like that were so much Kelpie-ish in nature, reported and documented. But lo and behold, the Loch Ness Monster was always considered the water horse, the evil water horse, and it's just an interesting comparison.
Didn't the Loch Ness Monster, like the different sort of physical characteristics of some of the reports and sightings, they all kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them kind of vary, but they're all fitting with a form or a different species of plesiosaur, right?
Not all of them, no.
Okay.
Just what's unique to the plesiosaur would be the one that's in the Loch Ness.
Right, like the sightings of Nessie, though, specifically.
Yeah, so yes, and
Yeah,
Loch
like
Ness.
some of them were like shorter. Some of them were like the long-necked kinds.
Yes, there. So that's what I'm about to get to. Is actually I was just pulling up my notes on the appearances. Yeah, so
Yes.
in Loch Ness, that's where we get specifically. I thought you were you. What was the question you asked? Ask it again. I think I was confused.
Oh, no, that's okay, because we shifted right on over. I said, like the physical reports of like Nessie in particular.
Nessie in particular. Okay, I
Yeah,
thought you were
like
asking in
varying
general of all the
degrees.
different appearances of. Okay,
No, just varying degrees of plesiosaur, but differing in some aspects and characteristics, but they all fit within that family.
Okay, yes, I gotcha. All right. So I was thinking that you were asking as a whole of all the different kelpies that have been reported.
Oh, no. No. I switched over.
There. I could go on for hours. Yeah,
were you not in my brain to know
no,
exactly specific? That's so weird.
I'm pretty
so
good
weird.
at being intuitive, but I'm not in your brain yet. Sorry. But with the appearances, yes, I was just going into that. There is a large variation in what the appearances of Nessie have been. But you're right, they have all been quite, they've been in that family of being some sort of reptile or dinosaur-looking creature. And so there was a Mr. Mackenzie of Balnain that had been, this was 1871 or so, and he was in the water and saw an object that resembled a log that was just like churning up the water severely. And he saw it turn over and it looked like an upturned boat. And it was moving slowly at first, but then it moved away really quickly. And there was no real evidence of it being anything else. But he said it didn't move like in a straight line. It moved in a squiggly kind of manner, which made it appear to not be like just something floating around, you know. It must have been something that was moving intentionally. And this was in 1871 or 1872. So that was a long time ago. And I don't think you would have any reason to really make that up for no reason. And then in 1888, we have an Alexander MacDonald, and he happened to see a large stubby-legged creature that had surfaced from the water.
Me, you guys.
They vary. And I want you to think about this question, and I'm going to get more into this later, but think about this question. Why would there be so many variations in the appearance of Nessie? So hold on to that question as I explain them all. So Alexander MacDonald saw a large stubby-legged animal surface from the water, and the animal propels itself about 50 yards from just where he stood on the shore of Loch Ness as he is looking at it, and it appears to be like a huge salamander. That's how he described it, like a large salamander.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
1888. That was an Alexander MacDonald on the shores of Loch Ness.
listen. Dinosaur, the first dinosaur, I had to look it up just now, was named in 1824. There's no way that they're going to have all the anatomy like worked out and think like, hey, this is what maybe a dinosaur would look like if this is something that fully existed, probably still exists, has some weird, listen, I'm not going to conjecture on where it's coming from, but there's no way. There's not a family of plesiosaurs just hanging out in Loch Ness for centuries and centuries and centuries that escaped from wherever, and we get to see it all the time. There's no way that they like, oh, listen, we just discovered this thing and was able to put all these bones together, and now it makes sense. We know exactly how this one specific species of dinosaurs moves and looks and whatever. You guys, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
So flash forward a little while. So now we're in 1933. This is an L.D. McKay. She happened to see an enormous creature that looked like a whale in the water.
Oh,
so this is a varying difference of
Mm-hmm.
an appearance. And it was rolling on its belly over like a whale. And she had been driving down the road with her husband at the time. So she and her husband both witnessed this. And this was in May of 1933. But after seeing it momentarily, it happened to plunge down into the water and had sent out just like massive waves. So once it plunged into the water, sent out massive waves, they just stopped and watched in awe and could not believe what they had seen. And this was one of the first stories that really kind of sent shockwaves through Inverness-shire, and everybody kind of was like, whoa, what's going on here? And that's I think when they first used the word monster, when they publicized this story in the newspapers.
nice.
And that kind of is what started drawing attention to the idea of the Loch Ness Monster. And then later in July of 1933, there was a George Spicer where he and his wife also saw something in the water, and they had seen, or not in the water, actually, again, it was on the road where they were driving, and this thing came across the road. And he says, I saw the most extraordinary animal cross the road in front of my car.
Hey, he's just taking a little break.
Yeah, just kind of runs in front of the car. No big deal. Yeah.
What are you doing?
And it wasn't it small? It was, the reported one was like smaller than what we typically think of, right?
So this one was about 4 feet high. It had short, stubby legs, 25 feet long, and it has a wavy, narrow neck that was about as long as the road was wide, so about 10 to 12 feet.
So
the
no,
neck
it
was
wasn't
about-
smaller. Oh,
No, so it was about 10 to 12 feet long, the neck. So it was kind of like plesiosaur-esque, you know?
yeah.
So that was another sighting, and that was really strange. It wasn't quite like the other one that was seen running towards the guy on the shore, Mackenzie on the shore with it was different, but running across the road.
I know, I love these stories. They're so good.
But they saw no limbs on this one. So he
How
must
was
have
it
had
running?
short, stubby legs, like, because
Maybe
they didn't see
limbs.
him. They didn't see
Maybe.
him. Or just like maybe hands just here. I don't know. Like, he had hands on his shoulders. Like, just maybe he was like, but they didn't see him slithering. They didn't describe slithering like a snake. It wasn't anything like that. They said it was like running across. So the strange thing was that they saw no limbs. The description, I don't know. I don't know how it moved. I really don't understand it. But
Let's all do our idea of what that looked like. Jeni, you go first. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah. So he described it as a prehistoric looking, prehistoric animal looking like a plesiosaur, like dinosaur thing that he couldn't explain.
How unusual.
Yeah. And then Arthur Grant, then a year later, had been riding his motorcycle. Now, this one is one that is really bizarre to me. And he actually was a student, I believe, of biology, and either biology or he was a veterinary student. And he was riding his motorcycle in the northeastern end of the loch. going towards Provoking and this village, and it was 1 a.m. It was late. Maybe it had like one too many pints, I don't know, but he says that he hit a creature.
Get out of here.
And when he stopped, the creature looked at him, and the creature had a small head, long neck, and it just kind of looked at him and then continued on crossing the road. There are so many stories that talk about these creatures crossing the road, trying to go back towards the loch. They're trying to get back to the water. That is the consistent thing that I'm seeing in these stories, is that the creature is trying to go back towards the water. Is that
why are they not in the water? Did the guy like flip off the guy with his little flipper hands when he was like gets hit? Like what's happening with this story?
Well, I have an idea about this. Given if these are true accounts, if they're not true accounts, it would not apply. But if these are true accounts, I do have a theory that I will discuss shortly. So yeah, he says that it disappeared. He chased it down towards the loch, and it disappeared into the water and the ripples, and he couldn't see it anymore. But he described it as a cross between a seal and a dinosaur.
I love that he chased
it. Yeah, wow.
Then there was a William Fraser in 1938. This was a chief constable of Inverness-shire. Okay, so this gives him a little more credibility.
Absolutely.
Right. So this is what I like about his story. And it isn't necessarily even a story, but it's a letter that he wrote, actually.
Oh.
And this letter that he wrote wasn't even released publicly until it was 2010. Yeah, it was released.
Wow.
They didn't release it publicly till 2010. 1938, Chief Constable William Fraser, he wrote a letter that the monster existed without a doubt, and he was very concerned that this hunting party that had arrived with a custom-made harpoon gun was going to catch the monster. They were very determined to catch the monster, dead or alive.
All right.
And he wanted to protect the monster. He did not want anything bad to happen to the monster, because that was part of his territory as the constable, and he was fearful that he couldn't do anything to stop it, essentially. And he quote unquote said, he saw his efforts as being very doubtful that he could do anything to stop it.
Wow. And
he was very upset about this. So this letter was released publicly by the National Archives of Scotland on the 27th of April in 2010. So you can look this up publicly on the National Archives of Scotland.
Oh, that's wild.
So much longer later. That was a great sentence, I said.
There's a reason, I'm sure. Things are just now being declassified, aren't they?
Was that a follow? Was there a follow-up? Like, what happened with that hunting party?
There's no information on that.
Well, they didn't catch it, so
there are stories. There are stories that things were caught, but there are stories that things were caught, but we don't ever see them. I mean, we don't know what ever happened to them, because the hunters that caught them did God knows what with them.
I have leading. Who knows? I have a very leading question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this BS of the DNA samples? They're like, oh, it's just algae. It's not actually anything but algae. Shut up, you guys. Shut up.
Oh, are you talking about what they found deep down in Loch Ness?
Yeah, they were like, we can figure out by eliminating all the DNA that's not the Loch Ness.
Well, it's algae. Yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah. Leading question.
No.
I had read there had been a contradicting, and I think this was one specific sample that they ran where they got different results, and I think they said run it again, because they came up with other unidentifiable DNA that they got.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And I remember I was speaking to somebody, actually, I think at the Loch Ness Center recently about this, and the DNA came up and it was unidentifiable, and they said, run it again, see what you get when you run it again. It was never heard about, I mean, it's not convenient, so you're not going to hear about it. But I think eventually, especially with what's been happening recently, I think there will be more that's coming forward soon, because there's a couple of people, and especially people in the younger generation, that are really pressing for this, that are not taking no for an answer, which I think is really good. People like me that will not take no for an answer. People that are just going out there and bulldogging it, doing anything they can, getting arrested or not, they'll just do whatever it takes to get to the bottom of things. And I love that. Not condoning illegal activity or anything here.
No.
Right.
Like, do what you got to do.
But,
like, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, I love the tenacity.
Yeah, absolutely. So always get to the truth. But the other evidence that's out there is the sonar readings. And the sonar readings go back to 1954. And then the best evidence that we have is actually as recent as 2023, which I'm excited to share with you guys.
Yes,
and drone footage. I have some photos that I can send you guys. I'm not sure. Can you share it on here? Can you put it on here? If not, I'll send it to you guys so you can take a look at it.
Yeah, send it to us and then we'll just pop it up with the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So the sonar readings in 1954 had actually shown on the rival boat 3 a large object that had been keeping pace with the boat for, it was quite a ways, but it was at a depth of 479 feet. And Loch Ness is one of the deepest lakes in the UK. So there's a lot of unexplored territory in Loch Ness as it is. So it's a really fascinating place to explore to begin with.
Yeah.
And it was detected for 2,600 feet. This is a half mile.
Oh
right?
My God.
So it was detected for a half mile following the boat beneath it for over almost 500 feet below, following it.
I love this.
Until contact was lost and regained.
Oh, this is incredible.
Oh, but it was regained?
In 1954.
I forgot that part.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So then, flash forward to 2014. Then you know how we have satellite maps and everything, right? So on Apple Maps, there happens to be this satellite image that comes up. Now, this one's an iffy one for me even. I'm not even sure how I feel about it, because you'll see why when I send you the images, but there's a satellite image taken where it looks like you can see that there's a fish here and it's really large, and it would be about 98 feet long. It would be some large sea creature, and it's pretty compelling. It is very compelling. It would have 2 fins or flippers on one side, on each side, but the boat, the Jacobite Queen, if you put it right on top of it, the wake that it makes is very similar. So that could be one explanation, but that for some reason the satellite just didn't pick up the boat.
Right.
So that's one explanation. However, it is very interesting. That's just one way to debunk it, but who knows? Something else that cannot be debunked in that same fashion is the 2021 drone footage that a YouTuber and outdoorsman named Richard Maver had actually posted to YouTube. And he's an avid outdoorsman, and he was going on this multi-day kayaking adventure to raise money for the Alzheimer's Society charity in the UK. And he actually ended up raising about 15,000 pounds, or about $20,000 US.
Nice.
And so he had no other ulterior motive aside from doing this. And I think it lasts like 4 days or so. And so he was recording his whole adventure kayaking through Loch Ness and whatnot. And I think it was one of the last days or so, when they are going up, he has the drone up in the air, and they end up catching what seems to be a sea creature, and it is bizarre looking. There is no debunking it unless you try to say that it's doctored, but it just doesn't look doctored. When you look at the video, it is just, whoa, something is right there, and you can see it. It looks like some sort of fish just ebbing with the tide, just kind of hanging out there. It's huge, and it would have been, I'm not sure if there's, it would have been a 20-foot long creature is what the ratio would have been. Yeah, it would have been 20 feet long, but it would have been huge. So I mean, there's, nowadays it's harder to evade capture with all the technology we have.
Yeah,
is everywhere. And in 2020, this is the most compelling evidence, actually, and this is what I'm really excited about, is the sonar evidence from this expedition. And this was operated by Cruise Loch Ness. The sonar-equipped boat detected a moving object that was 32 feet long at a 600-foot depth.
What?
It was a moving object at a 600-foot depth. It was 32 feet long.
That's
It was moving with the
very
vessel.
long.
oh my God, that is amazing and fantastic, and I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what
I
else
love all of
could,
it.
I mean, listen, I don't know what could be down there, but it's not like there's a submarine down there. I love that very much.
Nope.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is that the latest is in 2023. There was underwater caverns and subterranean chambers, passageways found by a Paige Daly. She runs a TikTok account that is called The Official Loch Ness. And so they had run an expedition going and looking for these caves that are adjacent to the loch, but they actually then go directly into Loch Ness, and some of them fill with water. And so then it's possible for any aquatic animals or aquatic life to then go through those passageways that then fill with water. And so it's really fascinating how these underground flooded passageways could work as a conduit to these caves. But
Jeni and I have discussed these caves before. They are very exciting to both of us.
Caves are amazing.
Yes, and underwater caves that could be bringing in ocean life. Yes, please.
Now I want to go back and say, I mentioned why is it that there are so many variations and discrepancies in how people seem to view Nessie or experience Nessie?
Oh, different species from different time periods.
Yes, spot on.
Boom, evolution.
Yeah. So that brings me to the geology part of this, and that's how I can get into the time slip phenomena.
Oh boy, listen, we're at the end of the hour. Do you want to just keep going, and maybe we split this episode in half and send it out audibly 2 times? Because I want to know so much more. And the topic, yes, please. So everyone, why don't you just sit back and relax, or not? Well, you'll hear the rest of it eventually, but please tell us about the time slaps.
Okay, absolutely. So we'll go into the geology here at the Great Glen Fault, that really long fault that goes all the way through Scotland. You can't miss it when you open the map. And that fault is where Loch Ness sits along. I mean, the loch is literally in the fault. It is the fault. And I am getting a refill for my wine.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Here we go. You gotta take care of the queen.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you. All right. I'm good to go. Thank you. Anyway, so yes, the Great Glen Fault, the Great Wine Fault over here, but the Great Glen Fault is a major tectonic feature in Scotland that is just insane. And one of the bizarre parts about this fault is that it's so powerful that even the ancients, I think, felt like, we better take a step back from this, because there are no prehistoric sites right along the loch. And in most cases, at wherever there's water, you'll find civilization and people living along both sides of it. And there's no inhabitants or habitation sites along Loch Ness as far as ancient people go. Yeah, you'll find castles from medieval times, but when you go back, thousands of years to the people that were more in tune with civilization, with the ancient awareness, consciousness, that sort of thing, that were building megalithic sites like stone circles, ring cairns, that type of thing, you're not finding any of that. Those that were very in tune with the earth energies. And all of those sites, I was just in a group chat with my good friends about this, and they're all miles away, at least 5 to 8 miles away from the Great Glen Fault.
That's so wild.
Yeah. And I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I have a good feeling that the reason being is that it's because the fault is that powerful that they felt that they needed some sort of space from it.
Okay.
Because the fault could cause unintentional disruptions in time and space, potentially.
Okay.
All right, so keep that in mind. Because it is really odd. You go to other lochs, other rivers, and you find all kinds of habitations, dwellings, and stone circles, cairns all around them, because it makes sense to build a community around, a water source and a river.
Of course.
Right.
But you don't find that around Loch Ness or around the Great Glen Fault, which is odd because it's a big loch and it's a big river. But what's the aversion to it, to these ancient people? Why didn't they like it? There was a reason. There was a method to the madness, or a madness to the method.
Hello.
So I can't keep that out of my brain. It just, there's something to that for sure. So faults can generate really intense geological activity. And this includes seismic stress, electromagnetic anomalies, as you know, at other sites. Like, for example, have you guys heard of the word piezoelectricity before?
I have not.
I have,
Yeah.
but I definitely had to refresh what was going on and exactly what it was. But
All right. So for those that aren't familiar with piezoelectricity is when it occurs when certain crystals, like, for example, quartz, it generates electric charge when under pressure. And it's essentially converting mechanical energy into electrical energy, or vice versa. And this is something that can happen when you're at a site like the Great Glen Fault. In Loch Ness, you have these rocks, like mostly metamorphic here, and then also igneous. And igneous rocks would be the most conductive for piezoelectricity. And that's primarily what Loch Ness surrounds itself with, especially in the northern part. So it's the most conductive type of material.
Okay.
Oh, and right on a fault line as well?
Yes. And it has the most quartz as well. So with the quartz there, that also just, it's all the right ingredients for a recipe of creating this big, really intense bubble of piezoelectricity and an electromagnetic field with all kinds of anomalies. And then you have active tectonics that are constantly causing seismic activity and, earthquakes and things that it's just all kinds of business action 24/7 happening that we don't even realize is going on. So think about what that could be causing that we can't even understand or see or measure in our human sphere.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating, and I wouldn't have thought about that. But like we already know that electromagnetic energy, especially in larger quantities, has a definite impact on the paranormal activity around it. I mean, look at, again, any of the national parks, Columbia River Gorge, that was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow, and so to have a place that is essentially creating more on a day-to-day basis, that's wild.
Well, as another place that was pointed out to me by my friend Helena, she also was mentioning to me Lake Champlain.
Oh, yes, with Champy.
Yes,
It was also
exactly.
caught on
Yeah.
sonar very recently, and it is a gorgeous image. Oh my, yes.
Yeah, and the presence of piezoelectricity there is the exact same phenomenon. I'm not familiar with the geology there, but I would bet you it's very similar. And the piezoelectricity would be responsible for that as well. And so going further with that geology, I bet you after I give you a little geology lesson in portaling, if you will, you could go and probably take a look at Lake Champlain, and it might be completely applicable to that, and you might have your answer there. It might be one and the same with Loch Ness. Who knows? With that said, Loch Ness itself, the loch itself, was only carved out by glaciers about 10,000 years ago in the last ice age. So the loch is not really that old. But the Great Glen Fault, as I mentioned, is over 400 million years old. Now, as we know, the EMFs or electromagnetic fields can alter human consciousness, awareness, and our perception of reality in multiple ways. And in some instances, potentially even our physical state. And it can cause what we have referenced as time slips, and even time slips like are an effect or side effect, if you will, of experiencing alien abduction or experiencing UFO sightings and other strange phenomena in the paranormal world. So all of these things tie together in some capacity. So and this usually all happens near faults. So if you go back and you also look at any point in time where you're looking at an alien abduction case, or if you're looking at a UFO sighting where time slips are involved, look at the surrounding geology, look and see if there is a fault nearby. Because in most cases, there will be a significant fault nearby, because the fault will be responsible for causing a time slip. Not necessarily the abduction or the UFO, but it'll be the fault that's causing this because of the EMF.
I love this so much, and I have so much research to do at this point in time. There will be so much reading.
Yeah, she's gonna do so much reading for me.
I'm gonna do so much reading, and then I'm gonna immediately tell Tressa, and she's going to make me slow down and repeat it, and then
I'm gonna forget half of it and misinterpret the other half. So this is gonna be fun.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because the rock, like in Loch Ness, for example, is schist, it's granite, it's quartzite, all these rocks that have quartz in it. And quartz is known for being highly piezoelectric and having highly piezoelectric properties. So it makes perfect sense that this would be a great place to essentially be a natural portal, if you will, or to be conducive to being a place where people may experience strange phenomena, experience hallucinations, experience altered states of consciousness, and create distortions, energy distortions, or showing even glimpses of the past or the future, or so we may think. Opening a portal, if you will, a natural portal, contributing to electronic malfunctions, compass malfunctions, that type of thing. And it's not uncommon. That happens around Loch Ness all the time.
And Columbia Gorge.
And Bradshaw Ranch. Are you guys familiar with Bradshaw Ranch? Okay, so I did a paranormal investigation myself at Bradshaw Ranch. And dinosaurs are common at Bradshaw Ranch as well. So at a lot of these places that appear to be portals, they are, a lot of them seem to have a connection to dinosaurs.
Yes, that's what I've heard as well in some of these, in my extensive, like, it's happening at national parks thing. A lot of the strange sightings are like pterodactyls. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And in fact, my best friend Helena, who I did that investigation with, she was trying to find a picture of a raptor footprint that was found at Bradshaw Ranch, that she found at Bradshaw Ranch. to send me, and if when she sends it to me, I will pass it along to you. But it's really, really fascinating. We had some bizarre experiences during our paranormal overnight investigation at Bradshaw. But going back to Loch Ness, there's been, other Bigfoot sightings, strange encounters, tons of UFO encounters and sightings. But as you experience at a lot of these locations that seem to be portal locations, like at Bradshaw, same thing. There were Bigfoot encounters, there sightings. There's like I think Mrs. Bradshaw was seeing Big Girl and seeing other Bigfoot entities that were appearing to her and seeing a portal in the sky, things that were just very strange. So similar strange phenomena as to what's been seen and observed at Loch Ness. And around Loch Ness, fairies have been reported, time slips, there's been reports of strange wind and these witches creating these wild wind gusts, all kinds of bizarre happenings. And
this is all starting to sound very much to a lot of the Skinwalker Ranch stuff too, as well, because there've been portals where they've seen Bigfoot just walk out leisurely out of them or in them.
Yes. Yeah.
And
exactly.
I don't know anything about the geology around there, but come on, you guys. Come on.
Yeah. It's all, I guarantee you, it's all very similar geologically. What I wanted to ask you too is, if you had to hypothesize why Nessie is always associated with water, why she's seen in water, he, she, I don't know how she identifies, but
right.
we'll just stick with she. How Nessie identifies is beyond me. So we'll just say Nessie. So why Nessie seems to always be in water or running towards the water. Why is that?
My assumption is it's an aquatic creature, and that's just how it lives. I don't know if it is.
I'm going to go with that.
From timeline to timeline. That's just where it exists. But then
I'm going to go with that, and then water being electromagnetically
hello, nice.
Yeah, conducts. There we go.
That's a good answer. But also, I'm going to challenge you, Tressa, because why would it be out of the water in the first place?
I don't have any idea. It seems like it's an aquatic animal. I don't know why it's running across the road like a chicken. I don't know what's happening there.
Fair point. Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I was going through this is, obviously it doesn't seem to be there on purpose. It doesn't seem to be crossing the road.
Right. That's very confusing. Those stories are very confusing.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't seem like it wants to be in the road. Like, why am I out here? I need to get back.
Right. It's always trying to go back to the water. It's always trying to get back to the water. But for some reason, it's not in the water. It's across the street, and it's trying to go back to the water. And I was thinking about this before the show, and I was kind of writing down notes and contemplating this. And as you mentioned, Jeni, water acts as a natural conductor for electricity and electromagnetic anomalies.
I love it.
And
I love this.
Therefore,
science comes in. It's so exciting when science comes in.
That's where it comes in. So water may even enhance the conditions with EMFs, for the electromagnetic fields, time distortion, acting as a conduit or natural portal, really.
How cool is that?
Yeah, but the other thing that could be the possibility is that, we have to consider the timeline. Loch Ness wasn't always Loch Ness. We know that it wasn't formed until about 10,000 years ago. But do you know what the landscape was prior to that?
I do not. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, I don't like, if it is a time slip and it's coming from millions of years ago, but the loch wasn't there until 10,000 years ago. Now I'm confused. Lay it out for me.
Okay. So it was a prehistoric ocean.
All right.
All of that area was completely underwater. So exactly where Loch Ness was, all of Scotland would have been completely underwater, and pleiadiosauruses, amongst other reptiles and other aquatic animals, were living underwater in those exact areas, and their fossils have been found all over Scotland. It was a shallow ocean.
Boom.
I love it very much. Listen, we need to take a
Solved.
break real quick, and I can't wait to get back into it.
For those of you naysayers, I want you to know how much I appreciate how many of you grabbed a hold of my small package after last week's show. It is out and available. You can get both of my books, The Other Side, A Guide to the Paranormal and Ghost Hunting, and my brand new book, Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness. Both books are out. One, of course, kind of a how-to ghost hunt book, and the other story book of strange supernatural occurrences all around the world. You can get your hand on my small package by just ordering it right off of my website. You can go right to paranormal60.com, scroll down on the front page there, or go to the shop and scroll down and you'll see our book bundle. And I was so humbled by the fact of how many men put their hands on my small package at the end of last week's show and bought it. It was great. It made me feel loved and wanted. I'm not going to lie.
I'm sorry, like that's the only edit I have.
Yeah, just throwing that in there. I love all of this so much. It's amazing.
So much. Listen, when I think of time travel or slips or whatever, I also have recently been like, well, okay, but how was the planet positioned at that time? So I thought maybe it was an ocean thing. But also, if an ocean was covering all that land, listen, this is really fun and neat, and I like it a lot. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. We
Yeah.
understand what you're saying on that one. Oh, my goodness. Can you just come back all the time and we can talk about ancient oceans and all of this?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
I mean, the oceans themselves are so mysterious to us because, I mean,
yeah.
Okay, Jeni.
I freaking love the ocean.
Oh, is that true?
So much.
Are there any specific animals you like in the ocean?
Sharks.
Oh, really?
I like sharks.
Okay. Yeah, because we know more. I don't know if this is true, but I keep hearing it. We know more about outer space than we do about our own GD oceans. So let's
It's accurate.
explore what's going on in there.
Mhm.
What's happening there?
Mhm.
Why are we dum-dums about our own planet?
You know what? Maybe it's because our oceans actually are some sort of portals.
Boom.
And filled
I
with
like
junk
that
we're
idea.
not supposed to know about. Oh,
Gunk we're not supposed to know about.
I
All
said
right.
junk, not gunk. That's
Okay.
gross.
All right.
Gunk.
Calm down.
Yeah, well, and it was so Scotland the land where Scotland is didn't actually start rising above sea level until about 60 million years ago. So all of those animals, the plesiosaurs and the other aquatic animals, were existing on that Great Glen fault line that was there for the past 400 million years. So
Boom.
theoretically, there could be numerous Nessies from different eras, different animals or aquatic animals that could have been portaling in and out. And we could be seeing them from different times, different animals just showing up by accident, appearing in one place, and they're like, oh shit, I'm not in the water. I better get back to the water.
I love it.
And they're trying to run back to the water because in their timeline, that is the ocean, right? And they're trying to get back to the water. So when they arrive in our timeline, they're totally confused and just trying to get back to where they need to be.
Trying to go back. They're just trying to go home, man.
And then maybe once they get in the water, they are able to go back because of that piezoelectricity, the conduciveness of that, they're able to get themselves back to where they need to be. So the whole concept of this is fascinating, because it seems that in these encounters, again, if they are true, we don't know for sure, but if they are true, it seems that once these creatures get back into the water, they seem to disappear.
Oh, this is so crazy.
Right? So that's one of the common themes here. And it's like, it's people catching either, as the scientific phenomenon states, that people could potentially be catching glimpses of the past or catching glimpses of the future, potentially. And so
theory. Hello.
that could be the case. So we could be maybe catching a glimpse of the past, or maybe they're the ones that are catching a glimpse of the future. They're here in our future. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's more, I think it's less of catching a glimpse and more of literal portaling.
Yeah.
And they're actually portaling through to our timeline.
Yes.
Is what it appears to be. These are natural Earth portals that are occurring. And Nessie's portaling into our present.
I love this so much.
About that little guy getting hit by that other guy at 1 a.m. Just be like, bro, I don't even know what's going on right now.
So what
era am I in? What year is it?
What time is What's happening?
Go home. Yeah. And actually, one of my really good friends, my dear friend and colleague, co-researcher, Andrew Collins, author Andrew Collins, he's a regular on Ancient Aliens. He was sharing with me recently one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. Actually, he had been doing a research project for a TV documentary that never actually had gotten produced in the end, but he had gone and interviewed an elderly woman in Inverness, and this was like, I want to say several years ago. I know maybe decades ago, but he had mentioned that this elderly woman had said in Inverness that there had been two people, this is an account that she told that was a folklore story, that there had been two people that had been traveling by horse and cart in the 18th century. And when they were traveling by horse and cart near the loch, all of a sudden they had disappeared and ended up 100 years later in unfamiliar clothing, old clothing. And then the clergyman took them in, and they lived out the rest of their days in the almshouse there.
The rest of their days, that's so sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and everybody thought they were absolutely mad. They thought they were insane because they claimed they were like, no, this isn't our time. Like nothing's right. None of this is right. They were just not.
Oh my gosh.
And this, I don't know if you guys have seen the TV show Outlander, but I think this might be where the author got her inspiration for the show.
Oh,
that makes perfect sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is a true story about something that happened near Inverness. So that would be totally, it would make perfect sense, because Diana got a lot of her inspiration and a lot of her ideas from real history. And this is something that happened near Inverness, and being near a place that is a gigantic geological portal, essentially a natural earth portal, I'm not surprised at all.
No, that's a bummer. I mean,
it's a bummer, and
it's one thing to like jump in and out, but then to jump in and be like, I don't know what's happening or how to go back, and I'm stuck here forever, and my entire life is just gone now. That's
at least they were together. I mean,
I guess. What if you don't like them?
At least they went 100 years into the future, not the past, right?
It's true.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and on that note, I do want to take it to a different fault line.
Yes, please.
And I do want to mention Roslin.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with Roslin Chapel?
I'm not.
Not really, no.
Okay, so this is a Templar. This goes back to the Knights Templar, kind of the Divine Feminine stuff. So Roslin Chapel, have you guys seen the Da Vinci Code?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so then you'll know Roslin. So at the very end, when they go to Scotland and she finds out she's a Sinclair and they go to that chapel at the very end, that's Roslin.
Okay.
And that chapel, she finds out that she's a Sinclair and she's part of the royal bloodline. The Sinclairs
Whoa, don't spoil the movie. What are you doing? Come on. I'm just
kidding. Calm down.
Everybody's seen it. Come on.
You've seen it.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So this is like, esoteric movie 101. Come on. But it's just, this is all stuff that was taken essentially from the book, The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, that Dan Brown usurped and then put into his, fictional novel. And it's all based on facts. It's not fiction. It is nonfiction in reality. So
you know what? I was like, oh, this is such a great story. It's too Hollywood though, so I want to believe it, and I love that it is based on some nonfiction story, and I love that. Thank you very much for giving that to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that said, I was lucky enough on my first visit to Scotland when I went to Roslin that I had gotten to book out Roslin Castle and stay there by myself for 3 nights. The whole castle I had to myself.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to tie into what I'm about to share with you. Now, Roslin also happens to be on a fault. It's called the Roslin Fault. So that said, Roslin Chapel was built in 1446, but the glen itself had been inhabited for about 6,000 years, and maybe even longer. And it also has connections to Arthurian stories and lore. But Roslin Chapel is also supposedly built on an ancient pagan site. The site itself is like just phenomenal. And the Sinclairs allegedly are one of the royal bloodlines going back to Jesus and Mary Magdalene. But as are the Ramseys, the Stuarts, the Lindsays, and the Setons. There's multiple families that are connected in the bloodline families, the McGregors, and then there's a couple others. And so these were all the Grail families, and they would meet monthly at Roslin Castle for a time. And then once Roslin Chapel was built, they would meet at Roslin Chapel. And there is a crypt that is beneath Roslin Chapel that is now supposedly filled with sand and inaccessible, but that's where all of the knights of Roslin were buried in medieval times, and that's where they would keep all of their treasures and sacred artifacts and heirlooms and things. So we know that it's still there, but it hasn't been opened. But it was filled with sand for some strange reason.
Well, so you can't get to the good stuff, that's why.
Yeah. And so Roslin is a very peculiar place, but it was built with all kinds of interesting mystical elements, including Masonic, Knights Templar. There's green men, Celtic green men all throughout it. Are you familiar with the green men?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try and explain it because it'll be bad, but go ahead.
Yeah. So the green man, they have him going from, basically birth all the way throughout the chapel to death. And then you have the story of the murdered apprentice, and you have the apprentice pillar, and then you have the master mason's pillar, and you have all kinds of other strange things in here that it's like basically the Bible in stone, but strange carvings that don't quite fit in. They're all esoteric and they all have subliminal meanings. And then you go down into the crypt, and then there's even further strange carvings. I could give a whole lecture on that alone, on the carvings in Roslin. It's just truly fascinating, and just a lot of Masonic stuff, early Masonic stuff. That's because Freemasonry wasn't even supposed to exist when Roslin was built, but it did. It was an early version of the craft because it stemmed from Freemason. It stemmed from the Knights Templar.
Right. And
the chapel and the front of it, the Lady Chapel, which is dedicated to the Virgin Mary, aka the goddess of Christianity, Isis, mother aspect of God, that whole thing. It's a really beautiful part. And there's even an 8-pointed star, which symbolizes the Queen of Heaven, which the 8-pointed star represents Venus. And that's the consort of the sun. that is the representation of the Virgin Mary, Queen of Heaven. They try to equivocate her with Isis, Venus, Ishtar, Inanna. So you see representations of that in the Lady Chapel. All kinds of indications that they understood that the goddess was being represented low-key in Christianity by Virgin Mary or Mary Magdalene even. And their property backed right up to a Knights Templar preceptory called Ballantradoch. And that is now known commonly today as Temple. Yeah, so pretty cool stuff. But you go down into the glen, and it's very mystical. There is an old walled garden where monks used to live that would attend to Roslin. And further down, just past where the old walled garden is, if you keep going, I used to spend a lot of time just going for walks on days that I didn't have tours. When I first started out doing tours and I was living at Dalhousie as a tour guide, I was doing day tours there. That's how I got my feet in the water initially back in 2019. I was living at Dalhousie Castle as their on-site tour guide, which is a pretty good gig. And they helped me get going with that. So on days that I didn't have tours, I went and did my own research and had, my own discoveries and whatnot. And I came across some really cool things. One of those things was this area that I had read about and I was determined to find. And what I had read was that these two boys had happened to go down into the glen. They lived in the village of Roslin. And they went down into the glen and they had this spot they liked to go to. And it was right down where the glen is, basically meets the River Esk. And that's what Roslin Chapel and Roslin Castle are built upon, is River Esk. Okay. So they go right down to the river, and there's kind of a cove-like area if you climb down into it. And when the river is kind of low, you can kind of sit in it, and it's just kind of quiet. It's almost just like a cave into the side of the river. And I saw it and I climbed down into it and I thought, oh, this is cool. And I sat down there and I was kind of thinking about the story that I had read about these boys. And I was looking for the carvings that they had seen. So the story was that they had gone down into this area after school one day. It was an afternoon. They get out of school, they go into the glen, they go down there to hang out, and they spend the afternoon, 3 p.m. or whatever, and then they're going up for supper around 7 p.m. Uh-huh. By the time they get into the village, everyone's going absolutely crazy. They're like, where have you been? Where have you been? Yep, the police have been looking for you. And the kids are like, what do you mean? We've only been gone for a couple of hours. And everybody's freaking out. No, you've been gone for over 24 hours. You've been gone an entire day.
Hello, time slip.
The kids had been gone for an entire 24 hours. And they had been there for what felt like 3 hours to them. It had been over 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
That's so wild.
That is wild and amazing. And I love it.
That exact spot.
We need to wrap up. It's been so
you have to come back.
Yeah, no, you got to come back because I feel like there are hours more to explore with this and I need to hear all of it.
Seriously.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. This is going to be a 2-parter with bonus episode probably this weekend. But
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Promote anything you want to promote, please.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have some upcoming events going. Actually, this weekend, we're going to be speaking at Angels Camp in California at the Calaveras Celtic Fair, which will be a lot of fun. And then beyond that, we'll be doing the San Antonio Scottish Highland Games in Texas. And then we'll be doing the Contact Modalities Expo in Delavan, Wisconsin. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, all the tours that we're going to be leading around the world, Spain and Portugal, Knights Templar Tour. If anybody's an Outlander fan, we do the VIP Outlander experiences in Scotland in June and July. And they'll feature a dinner with one of the cast members who's yet to be determined. And then we do England, which features private access to Stonehenge before it opens in the morning. And we get to go inside and actually be up close and personal with the stones, which is not available to the general public. And then Cornwall, going to explore Arthurian Cornwall. Then Ireland and Northern Ireland after that, which speaks for itself. So that's going to be the extent of the tours this year, which is all exciting.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's
you
so
gotta go.
much. That
Yeah,
sounds
you got to go check out these
amazing.
tours. I spent a great deal of time today looking through the tours because I love to travel. They look phenomenal. Everything's
Yeah.
super.
It sounds
Yeah, please go
phenomenal.
look.
Everything's
Is there-
first class with me.
Yeah,
Is there
it
a
looks like it.
website?
It's amazing.
Yes.
Is there a
yes.
website where we can find information on all of those? Did you
Yes, it's www.hayleyAramsey.com, HAYLEYA Ramsey.com.
Yes, spell it right, unlike what I did earlier today.
Thank you, Tressa.
So again, thank you so much. This has been great.
Unbelievable.
Everybody else,
Unbelievable.
hey, go check out our website and our socials and stuff. Drop us a line or buy our merch. Otherwise, we love you. Goodbye. Thank you. Mwah.
Thank you, guys.